Now, the African Development Bank hosted its second transport forum to address the continent's critical infrastructure and logistics challenges. The forum rallied key stakeholders from across the continent for a transformative conversation around the theme Africa on the Move, accelerating sustainable transport and logistics connectivity. Now, this event comes as the African Development Bank substantially increases its investment in the transport sector. Let's have a look.
The Afdb is a major contributor to infrastructure development and financing of transformational, national, and cross-border projects on the continent. And we've done more than $44 billion invested in the past decade, and also positioned ourselves as the resolute partner in efforts and initiatives aimed at strengthening planning, policy, and implementation of transport projects in Africa. It has, over the years, been our role to crowd in financing and facilitate development of large-scale critical regional programs in transport. And this is demonstrated in strategic initiatives such as the Program for Infrastructure Development in Africa, which we all call PIDA. And we've been working on this with the African Union, Afdb, and the UN Economic Community for Africa. We've also been looking at regional corridors and trans-African highway projects across all African regions with the regional economic communities. All these are aiming to foster regional cooperation and integration in support of the African Continental Free Trade Area, the Africa 2063 Agenda, the UN SDGs, and the AFDB's newly launched 10-year strategy, with what we call our high five strategic priorities remaining relevant over the next decade as well. So furthermore, the AFDB is cautious of the imperatives of climate change and its effects on the transport sector. Therefore, we have embraced and are scaling up resilient and green infrastructure with climate finance and private sector by promoting climate resilient infrastructure across the continent. You all probably know the strong commitment of Dr. Akinwumi Adesina, President of the AFDB Group, to climate change solutions for Africa, especially as it relates to adaptation and the launching of a series of initiatives, including, first, the Climate Change Action Plan 2021 to 2026, with an ambitious target of $25 billion for adaptation finance by 2025, to scale up and accelerate climate change adaptation across Africa. Second, we have the Climate Action Window set up by the bank to fill the significant climate finance gap to be directed towards adaptation, 75%, mitigation, 15%, and technical assistance, 10%, by supporting countries to implement their nationally determined contributions and long-term strategies under the Paris Net Zero objectives. Thirdly, the Alliance for Green Infrastructure in Africa, which was launched at COP17 in Glasgow, which has now mobilized fundraising pledges of about $275 million towards project development and project preparation, Africa-focused MDBs, G7 countries, and philanthropists or foundations. The objective is to catalyze about $10 billion of total investments from private sector into green infrastructure in Africa. For all of you in the transport business, transport infrastructure, whether you're looking at PPP projects or you're looking at private concessions, we all know that the big challenge in Africa is not the need, it's really the dearth of bankable transactions. So this is one of our deliberate efforts in actually unlocking really the market for project development in infrastructure, specifically green infrastructure. The target is to raise up to $500 million. We've done about $275 million to date. This is just an example of one of the key initiatives we're looking to implement, not just by ourselves, but with partners such as Africa 50, the African Union Commission, Afdb, and several others. So in spite of all these efforts, Africa's gap in infrastructure remains massive. So that's why the bank, in collaboration with other regional development banks, has established the Africa Investment Forum, now in its 6th edition, as an investment marketplace to accelerate the reduction of the continent's investment deficits through mobilization of private investment.